All right, everybody, we're coming up on 7 o'clock. So thank you, everybody, for coming. This is the May 17th, 2024, 14th meeting of the Dallas Planning Commission. It's coming up on 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. May we have the roll call of planning commissioners, please?
Commissioner Newell.
Here.
Commissioner Spofford.
Here.
Commissioner Schulte.
Here.
Commissioner Banford. Commissioner Koash.
Here.
Commissioner Grow.
Here.
Commissioner Swanson.
Here.
Quorum is present.
All present and accounted for. Thank you, folks, for coming in on such a nice evening. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our regular meeting of April 9th, 2024. I've looked them over. Does anybody have any comments, or would anyone like to make a motion on the approval of those minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as.
Okay, we've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I think that we can just do this with a voice vote. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from April 9th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Agenda item number 4 is public comment, and this is an opportunity for citizens to speak on any items this evening that are not on our agenda this evening. So if there's anybody present, and I haven't asked staff yet, is there anybody on the line electronically with us this evening?
We have no callers in the queue.
There's no callers, so it's just us in this room. Is there anyone that's here tonight that would like to speak to the planning commission on any issue that's not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to our public hearings. Our first public hearing is West Valley Industrial Subdivision 2402. The location is map number 8.5.3, tax late 801. It does not have a street address. I'm sure we'll see it in the staff report, the location and the approval criteria. I'll get to that in a moment. So this public hearing is an official public hearing before the Dallas Planning Commission. I now declare this public hearing open at 7:03 p.m. As this application is subject to land use proceedings recognized by state law, I'm required to read the following statement. The failure to raise an issue with sufficient detail to afford the Planning Commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So please direct all testimony this evening to the record and the applicable criteria listed in the staff report or to criteria in the Dallas Development Code you believe applies to this decision. The applicable approval criteria are found in the staff report, and they are Dallas Development Code Chapter 4.3.070, Land Division Preliminary Plat Criteria, and that is for a subdivision. I'll ask at this time if any members of the Planning Commission has a conflict of interest, a site visit, or an ex parte contact regarding this application to declare at this time. Okay, seeing none, the hearing will be conducted in the following manner. We'll begin with the staff report, followed by commission questions for the staff. Thereafter, we will hear from the applicant, including members of the applicant team, for a total not to exceed 15 minutes. And this may be followed by questions from the Planning Commission. Thereafter, we will hear from all other parties interested in presenting testimony on this item before the commission. Each person will be provided 5 minutes to testify. We'll then provide the applicant with 5 minutes to rebut any testimony that was presented. And then after we've heard all testimony, I will close the hearing and ask the Planning Commission to deliberate, and then ask if there is a motion in response to this proposal. In this case, the commission's decision is final unless the decision is appealed. At this time, we'll start with the staff report. May we have the staff report, please, Chase?
Yes, indeed. As mentioned, this is application subdivision 2402. The request is for a land division, that's why it's a subdivision, to create an 18 lot, essentially an industrial park. It's located on Cloud Corner Road. The property may be familiar to you. We've previously seen requests for annexation, comprehensive plan amendment, and zone change on this property a couple of times recently. So if it seems familiar to you, that's not surprising. Despite those previous requests for rezoning, the city council determined that it should continue to remain as industrially zoned. So that is the zoning that you see on the zoning map currently. And so the proposal now is for an industrial park. As we look at the air photos, this is generally the site that we're looking at. The site does have some constraints to it. There's creeks both to the north and to the south of it. There's also some wetlands on the property. So there are a few constraints to it. There's also a proposed future extension of Furvilla Road that would run generally along the east side of the property. So important to highlight that as part of a previous partitioning process, the applicant did dedicate 35 feet of their property along that east side of their property for that future road right of way, with the other 35 feet to come from the adjacent property on the other side. So one of the concerns that does come up as we review this application is Anna Street. There's some code language that talks about when a street stubs to a property, you continue to extend the street through the property. And so that that concern is highlighted there on the screen. And then the applicant's preliminary plat, and you can kind of see how that lays out on the aerial photograph. Zooming in on that and rotating 90 degrees to make it fit. There is a storage facility that has previously received land use approval, which takes up kind of that center portion of the site. And then the remainder of the back part of the site would be divided into 16 industrial sized parcels for small industrial kind of shops. The site would be accessed from a shared driveway, which would principally at this time take access off of Cloud Corner Road. They have wetlands permitting to build a shared driveway over the wetland that abuts Cloud Corner Road. So that paperwork from the state is in progress. As you can see, the shared driveway extends to the back of the property before turning and connecting to Southeast Anna Street to provide a continuous fire access lane. So fire apparatus could access the site from both sides, as well as connecting to the east side where that future extension of Furvilla would exist. At some point in the future. And so that could provide a secondary point of access to the industrial park once that future collector road is constructed. So subdivisions, there's essentially 7 approval criteria in 4.3, 60, 70. It has to comply with the applicable code sections in the underlying land use district. Has to comply with the plat naming requirements of ORS Chapter 92. Streets, roads, sidewalks, utilities, etc. will have to conform to the adjoining development. Private common areas, if any, are identified. Required state and federal permits have been or can be obtained. Improvements required by the city and other utility providers can be met, and has to conform to the applicable master plan development standards, if any. In this case, it's not within a master plan district, and so that section of code would not apply. So this written staff report goes into some greater level of detail as to how each of the individual code sections is addressed. But in general, the recommendation it does can meet the approval criteria, and so staff's recommendation is approval with conditions. Most of those conditions are sort of standard boilerplate for subdivisions, but there are three in particular that are specific to this particular development. The first condition of those special conditions is number 2, which identifies the shared driveway to Monmouth Cutoff being approved essentially for interim use. And the applicant to enter into a recorded development agreement, so the driveway be either relocated or closed when the Fur Villa Road extension is completed. If that driveway does not meet the state spacing standards in effect when that construction project happens. Not knowing the exact alignment of Fur Villa, it's hard at this point to say if that does or does not meet the spacing standards. So condition of approval here, which may or may not apply if and when the time comes, but trying to hedge some bets there. The second two relate to street improvements and dedication. The first is regarding Southeast Anna Street. Extending a residential street into this industrial park doesn't make a lot of sense at this time. It doesn't provide additional, traffic safety or capacity. And so in those sorts of circumstances, the city can accept a future improvement guarantee / waiver of remonstrance to a local improvement district in lieu of doing street improvements and dedication at this time. And so staff are recommending that as a condition of approval rather than extending Anna through the site today. The second one there, condition 4F, relates to frontage improvements along that future extension of Southeast Fur Villa. The section of right-of-way that exists currently is essentially floating and does not connect to anything on either side. So doing street frontage improvements, street trees, sidewalks, curbs, gutters, bike lanes, all that fun stuff to a street that doesn't connect to anything on either end doesn't really make a lot of sense at this time. Certainly doesn't improve traffic capacity or safety. And so again, in those circumstances, we can accept a future improvement guarantee in lieu of doing the improvements at this time. I know that the applicant has some concerns regarding kind of all three of these conditions, and I'm sure that the applicant's team is prepared to speak to that. And staff are also prepared to answer any questions that the planning commission may have regarding these, but that's kind of the conditions of approval that have been recommended. And so with that, that'll conclude my report. If you have questions for me now, certainly happy to address those as best I can.
Okay, I'm looking for the list of all of the conditions. Okay. So page 5 and 6 of the staff report list all. So
Yes.
planning commissioners, are there any questions from staff before we hear from the applicant on this application? Seeing none, I have one. I'm just for clarification purposes, the intent is that these internal streets in this subdivision will be private, not public streets.
Yes, the way the plan is shown is that these are essentially shared driveways. Important clarification there because Dallas Development Code does not allow private streets, but we do allow shared access driveways. Think of what you see over at Safeway, where there's a set of driveways that serve multiple properties. This would be functionally the same concept. So
And again,
yes,
for clarification, I'll just point out that that's common in industrial parks.
yes.
Are there any other questions for staff from the planning commission?
My follow-up question is, there's been areas where we don't manage the upkeep of the streets and those access driveways? Is there some consideration for that in the plan?
Development code does address this, and a standard condition of approval in these circumstances is to as the development code requires, record concurrently with the land division a maintenance agreement for the maintenance of those shared driveways. Exactly what that language entails, who's responsible for what. That's kind of a private property owner matter for them to figure out. As long as they have some kind of document laying out how that responsibility is allocated, then that's really all that the city is concerned about. But yes,
So that doesn't wind up back.
correct. And there is backbone utility infrastructure running through the site, which would be publicly maintained. So there is a public water line connecting to the public fire hydrants, as well as a public sewer main that would run through that site. I believe there's also some public storm drainage, although I forget exactly where on the site that's located. There is also some public storm drainage as well. So the underground utilities, the backbone is public.
So since we're talking about streets, regarding Anna Street, it says in here that we're just doing a non-demonstrance, so they're not proving that or dedicating right away. Is it intended that Anna would eventually be extended when Furvilla comes through?
So development code does require that when streets stub to properties that are being developed, that those streets be extended. And so that is what the code would envision, is that it be dedicated as a public street at some future time. Now, when is that time going to happen? If ever, like calling in those agreements is a political matter for the politicians to figure. But by requiring the development agreement, the waiver of remonstrance, we have met the letter of the code. Whether that actually ever gets built in practice is a separate issue.
So should it become necessary, it's possible.
Yes, should it become necessary in the future, then we would have the agreement in place that would happen. If the necessity of that never materializes, then the paperwork is just.
I guess my concern is looking at, I guess it's exhibit A5 that kind of shows where the road would be. There are different lots
Mhm.
platted basically on top of where that road would be.
Correct,
I
yes.
don't know that there's anything that would keep someone from building a building where that road would be, since there's no easement or no right of way or anything else. And if somebody chooses to build their building right up against the edge of their property, then when it comes time to build the street,
Mhm.
the city gets to buy somebody's building or decide, no, we're not gonna do the street because somebody decided to build their building there. That doesn't seem like we're planning for the future very effectively.
So the shared driveways would have a shared access easement that would preclude constructing on top of them. One of which does line up with that future extension of Anna Street.
So is that actually a shared driveway to Anna Street and will allow access?
Yes, it's primarily for access to the industrial properties and fire apparatus access at this point, but the intention is that should Anna Avenue be extended, that area would already have some level of base pavement. It would already be clear of development because it is the shared driveway. So two birds, one stone, as it were.
The problem I see is that if you look on A5, Anna Street is wider than their shared driveway as platted. So someone could build into where the right of way would need to be for Anna, and then we would still have that problem.
So there are there are setbacks in the industrial zone. So the property, the development wouldn't be like all the way up to the property lines. There are some setbacks.
Setbacks
But
including from shared access ways.
no, from property line. So setbacks are always measured from property line unless specified otherwise, like the setback from the top of a creek bank, for example, but otherwise it's always from property line.
Okay, I
Um,
guess I'm specifically looking at what would be.
and
lots-
30 feet is sufficient for some level of
How
access.
wide is Anna Street? Do we know?
Anna Street, I believe, is a 60-foot right of way, which is larger than our current standards. 30-foot is narrower, but when you look at what's actually, necessary, you've got 20-foot minimum for fire apparatus access.
Okay.
So, 30-foot is
In
more
that
than
case,
that.
then I see the problem as for lots 16 and 13. The property line is on what would be the far side of Anna Street. And
Mhm.
so if it's 30-foot setback, somebody could put their building in the middle of where Anna Street is supposed to be. I see that as an issue. So I guess we can talk to the people or possibly do an additional condition on that.
Yeah, I mean, you could require that easement be widened to be at a 50-foot local street standard from edge of easement to edge of easement. You could also accept that a narrower construction standard would exist in this area. You probably wouldn't need, planter strips and street trees in an industrial area the same way that you would in a residential area. So
So Anna Street's at like a 30-foot curb to curb right now.
I think currently it's 36. I think that was the
36, okay.
standard at the time it was constructed.
We can address this later.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from planning commissioners for staff before we hear from the applicant? Seeing none, let's move on. We'll hear from the applicant. So step on up, folks. As a reminder, you have 15 minutes plus or minus to present. And please, for our purposes and for the record, state your name and your address as you address the planning commission. So thank you very much. And whoever wants to start, go ahead.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Why I'm a little nervous tonight, but I've been in front of you guys a few times. I don't know why I am. Anyway, Ken Perkins, my address is 4925 Livermore Road, Dallas. First of all, I want to talk about the 15 minutes and I don't think that we're going to go past it, but this is my third time here. So I'd like to be able to have enough time to explain some things and to talk about some things. So if we go a little over, I hope that you guys are okay with that because this is.
Take your time, make your presentation,
okay.
and I'll referee it.
Okay, all right, because, okay, and Charles is my engineer with Lock Engineering. I think you guys met Fred before. Fred's my land use person. So anyway, yeah, obviously I'm stuttering a little bit, but I apologize. First of all, I don't know if you guys remember, I've talked about myself before, but Ken Perkins, I'm a local person. We live, eat, shop here. I'm a local developer. I've done subdivisions here in town. And I want to thank you for your support, in past stuff, but even in the last two times that I've come to you guys, it went to council and it didn't pass. But I appreciate your guys' support in that. And with that being said, I still think that after deciding just to say, okay, and leave it industrial, I still think that I came up with a good idea for Dallas, for the neighbors, and for a good project. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Some of the stuff I'm going to say, I need to say some of this stuff, but you guys might not want to hear some of it, but I just need to go a few things for myself. So this is my third time here. I have been working on this project for 2.5 years. 2.5 years. And I have spent a lot of money. I know you guys, that's my deal, but I would really like to start getting somewhere on this project because I really feel like I can do something good and I'd kind of like to get started on something. So I'm hoping for some more support. As for looking at this picture right here, to make this work after we decided to just leave it industrial, I went back into my engineers. I paid for it. I moved my mini storage over, even though it had already gone through site design review. I did that to make the street happen, cost me more money, but I wanted to make something work and make it flow. With that being said, I'm still trying to be a good neighbor, as I said before. And what I'm saying about being a good neighbor is my intents are to have Anna Street gated for a secondary access for fire safety. I talked with the chief and the fire marshal to make sure that everything works for fire within there. They need a secondary access. They would have a gate access. That way, we're still not sending through any traffic, industrial traffic through a neighborhood, because I still believe we shouldn't. And with that being said, they have two accesses in and out of there. If you guys don't remember, they have two different spots. They can come in on Virginia, they can come in on Godsey. If you guys think that that needs to go through someday to a future street that I don't even know if it's going to happen. If it does, it's going to be years down the road, but it's not even, it's just kind of thrown in there in the TSP. Okay, it's possible, but why would we want to open that for industrial? That's something. So when we were designing this and when I changed things, I tried to do it with more cost to not send people through that neighborhood and in hopes to not also have the street go through. We can talk about that here later. As in regards to the actual project, my idea was not to be a landlord like some of the other places where I just lease these out and make a bunch of rent money. I could do that. But what I want to do is I want to have these be individual lots at decent prices that hopefully businesses can afford a lot and either build a stick-built building. I'm going to be building one for my business or a pole barn. And then they can build something that's affordable instead of renting. Or maybe we could get some of the businesses that are that should be in a storefront, maybe out there. And that's my thing. I've already got people interested in this project that are interested in it. So I think it could be good. You know, it could get some businesses that can actually put money back into their business instead of renting, or new businesses coming to town. Charlie actually already sent me one person, but it's just too early, you know, and so I couldn't really help with that situation, but in the future, I hope to. So that's what I'm hoping with this project that can happen. This project also doesn't affect schools, parks, and all that stuff. It's a great revenue. It's a great tax base. So it's another good thing. So all around design of this is a good thing. I wanted to bring up the wetlands. Because of the long time frame of all these things that I've gone through, I originally had access to wetlands to hopefully get rid of the wetlands on my front parcel and maybe, you know, do other things with the front road. Because of the time frame that I've gone through, I lost those. There are no wetlands within this jurisdiction anymore. The only way that I could get that driveway was, pardon me? Credits, excuse me. There are no credits in this territory anymore. You can't go outside of the territory. So that driveway is limited. And it's doable with the county, with the city for what it needs to be. I can't expand it any further. And we can't move it later. So, and besides that, once you build buildings and businesses, you're not going to want to move a driveway. So I just wanted that to be known. And then when we were looking at designing this, just like the other two times that I came in, I sat down and I've had lengthy discussions with Chase. From the very first time 2.5 years ago, I said, what does the city need? That's what I designed. And I thought it was a golden project, you know, mixed use. Didn't happen. Okay, that's all right. Came back. I tried it again, came and talked to Chase. Didn't happen. Okay. So now we got industrial. I came back. I talked to Chase again. There's been a couple of changes from what our discussions were, and I tried to design this to not only be a good project for businesses and the neighbors, but I tried to design it so that I was doing the things that Chase needed. Some of those things I'm going to let either Fred or Charles talk about. I just kind of more so want to talk about this other stuff, but I'm going to let them talk about the three things that that are in conditions of approval. And a lot of the things that are on there, there were some things that I wasn't, I didn't have designed, and then after going and talking to Chase, I designed. Or I had them design that way. I didn't design them, Charles did, but, and, you know, so I'm changing those things to see what he needs. But at the same time, as I do this, I don't want to go and go and go. I'm trying to do what is right and what is fair, and I just don't want to go beyond a certain point.
Ken,
Yes,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but.
okay,
you know, your
too long.
Past 5 minutes,
Okay,
I encourage you to let your team, do your presentation, because there will be questions, and you'll have plenty of opportunity.
okay.
So go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, I
just
just,
wanted to
okay,
give
the
you a
last
reminder.
thing I want to say is I just hope that before we close the meeting, I just hope that a lot of the questions come beforehand, before we close, before you close them. Just because, I mean, that's kind of hard. Sometimes when we sit back there and they close the meeting and there's discussion and we can't say anything. So I'm hoping that a lot of discussion happens before. That's it. I'll stop now. So they'll let
Very
them
good.
talk. Sorry.
I'm sorry to,
No. It's fine.
like I said, I'll refer it.
Yeah, I got you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so our responses to the criteria.
Name and address.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
So my name is Fred Evander. I live at 746 Southeast Shelton here in Dallas. A lot of our responses to the criteria are included in the packet that was submitted to you. We do have some issues, as Ken was saying, with 3 of the conditions. And sort of going through them one by one, I don't know what the best one to start with was, but it feels like we've sort of talked about Anna quite a bit. And so I'll just start at Anna. The criteria within the code says all local and collector streets that stub into a development site shall be extended within the site to provide through circulation unless prevented by environmental or topographical constraints. I would argue that the applicant has done that as part of this proposal. He has extended Anna into Anna. They connect. They're going to provide fire access. Potentially they could provide pedestrian access through the site. But one of the things that Ken has sought this entire project is he didn't want industrial traffic flowing out onto Anna. That's why he proposed residential in the back of the site originally to go into a residential street, right? That's why he's reconfigured his road now to come out to Cloud Corner. The idea to not have industrial traffic on Southeast Anna, which, as we talked about last time we were at the council, is crocodile road. It's a mess. We don't want to put truck traffic on that road, right? It's a nice residential neighborhood. So I would argue that that's met. And what I would argue too is that if there's subsequent concerns about what exactly road is getting put in there, those can be addressed at the time of the civil review of the improvements is what I would encourage. So I would encourage you to strike that condition regarding the remonstrance to Southeast Anna. Now, with regard to the shared driveway and moving the shared driveway right now, Chase, could you flip to the one thing? We don't know exactly where this road is going to be coming out. We don't know where Furville is going to be coming out, but we do know that 200 feet gets us to just beyond the driveway for that house. That's your standard right now. I would argue that you're probably not going to pull out Furville any closer than that. Based on that, I would say he meets the standard right now. Also, we have real heartburn over a couple of things about the way that the condition is written. One is the language such that the driveway shall be relocated or removed when the Furville Road extension is completed if the driveway does not meet the spacing standards in effect at that time. Right now, we meet the standards. If the TSP comes through and it says, you know what, on Cloud Corner Road, we want 300-foot spacing standards, we want 500 feet spacing standards, all of a sudden the standard that we meet now is going to be shifted on us. And so it's really especially that last little phrase, in effect at that time, that really gives us heartburn. I would also say it significantly adversely affects, this subdivision is specifically affecting the back part of the parcel. So Chase, can you go to the picture of the subdivision altogether? So you can see the out parcel out toward the street is not included in this application at all. This subdivision specifically includes those 18 parcels behind the front parcel. So if the shared driveway is required to be moved and say Ken puts a car wash or something in that location, all of a sudden that car wash has its access moved, have to be moved on it. And that is could be very detrimental to that business and that out parcel. So we would, again, with that one, we understand the intent of that completely. We would argue that we meet the standard right now, and we shouldn't be subject to potentially a changing standard in the future. Now, the third one.
Sure, I want to talk about something like that. Because there's something to get in touch. Can you go back to that slide on the 200 feet, please? Can I stand up and go over there?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure time.
So this also wasn't a previous condition of approval or anything. We can't move that because of wetlands. This is the 35 feet that Chase asked me. I gave it to the city for future. Gave it to him. And I said, okay, and now all of a sudden I've got a remonstrance and some very big warrants. So these things are kind of a little bit harder, but this road, yeah, you can take this house down. By then, it's gonna be over 700,000 house. This is a nice place. I don't see why I'm tearing it down. It's not a building problem. It's a do this, it's a road, probably shit. We could bring it out here, whatever. I mean, they might move it on the east side of two creeks and whatever. But regardless of what I'm trying to say is this 35 feet down here by the time you come through or you come around. The main thing is that front parcel we showed with Libertyville, that business, and also parcel 2, which is the mini storage. Those are huge coming off of that entrance. Huge. Big way for them. And regular slate is car wash. So somebody wants to put extra buildings in there. They're going on the entrance because that's the jam that I want. Okay. And so it's one big point of that.
So with regard to the third condition, is specifically, Ken just talked about it a little bit, the remonstrance to Fur Villa Road. Ken has dedicated 35 feet to the road right now. And as Ken sort of alludes to, what we know about that road at this point is very, very little. We do know that if it ever gets put in, it's primarily benefiting one property. It's benefiting the property to the north of this. And it's not specifically benefiting this property. As such, if a remonstrance is recorded for the property, we would highly, highly recommend that it not be per se based on lineal footage of frontage or anything like that, but based on the trips generated or the impact associated with that road. I will say that Fur Villa Road, and looking at it, Ken mentioned 2 creeks. To get the full Fur Villa extension, you're going to be crossing 2 creeks and a railroad crossing. In my mind, that sounds like about $25 million. I'll say maybe $20 million. As an expensive road, and we all know that there's a big industrial property to the north that would be the primary beneficiary of it. We would argue that that property should be responsible for the bulk of that road, because they will primarily benefit from it.
Okay, we're coming up on time here, but I'll allow 5 more minutes if you want to let the rest of you. Is there anything else? Okay, so go ahead. I'll give you a few more minutes. Please wrap it
So
up.
that's basically our arguments about the three conditions. We're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you very much. And I did not mean to rush you folks, but we do, all this stuff is built into the code, which we're bound by the same. And I'll also say one more thing before we go on regarding past decisions. This body makes decisions based on code. Planning commission can make decisions based on community standards that are above and beyond our control. So our support in the past hasn't necessarily been support of your projects. It's been there in compliance with the code. So I just wanted to clarify that. So thank you very much for your presentation. But don't go anywhere because now it's time for the planning commissioners. This is our opportunity to ask the applicant to answer any questions that we might have. So
I was sort of curious as to on the residential plan that you had, what caused it not to be approved by the.
Oh, look,
that's.
yeah,
That's.
yeah, let's not get into that in this hearing. We can talk after.
I'll just say this, it was zoned industrial, they had applied to change it to residential. We found their application to be in compliance with the code and then the city council reversed that decision.
But it's a new day, new application.
Right, and this,
New
it does
criteria.
comply with the underlying zoning district, which is industrial. So it's a good question, but we're not gonna get into that.
We're not gonna go.
Well,
Uh-huh.
on the opportunity that any decision that we might make tonight could be appealed to the city council. We don't want to get ourselves in any gray area there. Good question. Thank you. Questions from planning commissioners? Andy, go ahead.
I'd actually like to ask Chase a question real quick to clarify. To maybe set up any questions or answers that we might ask the applicant. Is that okay?
Sure, go for it.
So. In this application, is the intention for when Fur Villa is extended? That this property would then access Fur Villa? Or is it always going to have access onto Monmouth Cutoff unless it has to be moved? Because of any future requirements and where Fur Villa ends up?
Yeah, so the expectation is that the access onto Cloud Corner could remain if it met the spacing standard. That's why the condition is specifically phrased around not meeting the spacing standard. If it does meet the spacing standard, then of course that driveway could stay.
So the intention for this is for that access to always be onto Cloud Corner and not to eventually tie into Anna onto the future Fur Villa and then eliminate that access. So that access will always be there as long as it meets spacing and any other requirements.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
That was the intention.
okay.
So
That answers my question.
question for the applicant?
So I will note that as part of the application at Anna on the east side of the site, the easement would extend to Anna, so access could be taken from Fur Villa onto Anna if desired in the future.
And I understand two things from your points. One is that you kind of assumed where Fur Villa was going to be, and that was kind of the precedence for your argument. The reason we are putting the requirement in there and the condition is because we're not designing Fur Villa. We have no way of knowing where it's going to be. So in order to not tie the hands of future requirements, that's why the condition needs to be there. And while your assumption of 200 feet, there's some credence to it, it doesn't really have any bearing on the discussion because we have to leave the condition in there, in my mind, in order to not mess up. Well, that's the reason the condition is there. So that we don't have unsafe conditions at a future point or the city having to spend X amount of additional dollars to do that. The other, if you want to comment on that, you can do that. And then I have one more question.
Yeah, so we are completely fine with access spacing standards. We absolutely get why they exist. I think our main concern with the access spacing standard as it's written. It's the way that it specifically says any standard that I'm sorry.
Future standard.
Any future standard that might exist. If it was 200 feet, which is the current standard, we're fine with 200 feet. If it says specifically 200 feet. Our concern is that the TSP gets updated and for some reason the standard changes and all of a sudden we're subject to a standard that was not in place at the time of the land use application.
Next.
And as an engineer, I would say if the standard changes, it's probably for safety or other valid traffic planning reasons, so. That's why the standard could change and there'd probably be, I would assume there'd be a good reason for it. And yeah, and I can't. Yeah, I can't allow you to grandfather in any future standard. I wouldn't work for me. One more, go ahead. I'm really trying to address.
Yeah, I
All
understand.
the questions
Yep.
that we could possibly
Yeah,
ask.
I appreciate it.
So
So Chase, when you put in that condition, did you actually think about the businesses on that street? Did you guys actually consider that? Because anywhere, whether it's mine or somebody else's, you're taking away something pretty big there. If you're doing that, especially,
taking away. or-
well, I'm saying having that parcel 1 right there and having that.
Can you point to
access.
parcel 1? Because that was one of my other questions. Is it that little rectangle down below?
Subdivision, this is parcel 1.
Oh, okay.
So if I build something or if I sell this, and you take away this, or I have something in writing that says someday this could go away. You think any business is gonna go, well, that kind of gives away our entrance to come right into our spot.
Well, and we just clarified that that entrance is always going to be there. It may have to be moved, which is why that condition is in, but it will always be there. It sounds like, because that's your access.
I can't move it due to wetlands restraints.
And that was gonna be another question in a minute, so.
Okay.
To answer the question of the applicant. When I was drafting that language, I did not really consider the marketability impacts that might have to the property. Honestly, I thought I was a little clever trying to kick some of these cans down the road with the development agreement. But obviously that does have some impacts to marketability in the here and now that I had not fully accounted for. So
So-
different perspectives, as it were.
So that piece with the wetlands across it is parcel 1, but that's not part of the subdivision. Is that what we're talking about?
Parcel 1 of the partition.
Okay, so that's not what we're talking about tonight though, right?
The entrance is part of
The entrance, yes.
Yeah.
And it goes across parcel 1, is that whole thing
Yes.
parcel 1? Okay. So, okay, that tells me that. The other thing you talked about was the extension of Ann Street. And I realize, I understand your feeling and desire to not put industrial traffic through the subdivision. But the reason the standard is there is so that streets can be extended and improved through new development. Your choice to not want to put industrial traffic through their neighborhood is half of it. The other half is people in that neighborhood may want to be able to access for Villa, pedestrians, vehicles, everything else. It may make things a whole lot cheaper, easier, faster to get where they want to go. That's why we have a standard that requires the extension. So in these deliberations, I want to make sure that we either I don't see the necessity to dedicate right away for that. But I think it's going to need to be very clear that we don't make it impossible to develop that as a public street at some point in the future. And so I don't see enough on your preliminary plans that shows me that. So we'll have to discuss that.
Is there a question?
I'm just letting them know that
It's coming.
that needs to, your future, well, he was saying he doesn't want to make that a public street. I'm saying I think it has to be a public street, so it's more a statement than a question.
Gotcha.
So that we're clear in communication.
So, what? Chase, I'm having trouble finding it on your guys' website. I know that I saw it earlier today, your local street standard what is the width of your local street?
So there's essentially three different local street options. The sort of the criteria standard is a 50-foot right of way, 30-foot curb to curb, with 5-foot sidewalks on both sides and 5-foot landscape utility strips on both sides. There's also two alternate standards. The first is used in high traffic areas, high density residential areas. And that's a 60-foot right of way with a 36-foot curb to curb, which corresponds to the city's old standard for a local street that you would see in older parts of town. And then there's a narrower alternate standard that is a 40-foot right of way with a 20-foot curb to curb. 5-foot sidewalk on both sides, 5-foot landscape on both sides as well still. But no on-street parking allowed with that situation, which would make sense in this context because you would have parking lots for the development already, so you wouldn't need on-street parking. But yeah,
Gotcha.
so there's kind of three different standards in code there.
Yeah. That's why the road is designed for 30-foot access easement as it's designed right now.
30-foot access easement isn't 40, 50, or 60 foot of right of way though.
That's right. It's exactly right.
So you're,
Expecting there to be through, yeah. Plan was created.
for
So
the
a
site,
shared driveway.
or for fire, for shared access,
The
okay.
only reason why it ties in as it does, is to provide secondary fire access.
For your project,
Well, for all,
yeah,
or for some demand. The fire department needed access from this.
so you're basically, if I understand you, you're saying you don't want to meet the requirement to extend Anna to future Fur Villa, is that correct? Yes, that's correct, okay. I hear you, that's fine. Blah, blah, blah. Can you clarify, so I know your driveway goes through some wetlands. Are you able to do that, or how are you, if there's no wetland credits, how are you able to put your driveway across there and?
Be a nationwide 18 permit, which allows us to, without purchasing credits, pay a fee in lieu. As long
okay.
as our total impact is less than 1/10,
Okay,
which is why the driveway is configured as it is.
okay,
We're maxed out.
Okay.
Two square.
okay.
Any other questions from planning commissioners for the applicant at this time? Seeing none. Andy, do you have anything else? We appreciate your expertise and your level of thoroughness.
I appreciate your patience and willing to work with me here.
Okay, so now thank you, applicant team and Mr. Bergens, again, thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
Working with us throughout all the process as you try and develop this property. So now we'll hear from all those in attendance tonight that would address the planning commission on this agenda item. So if there's anybody that's in the room that would like to address this application, now is your opportunity to speak. Is there anyone here that would like to do that? Okay. Seeing none, and we have no one in the queue electronically.
No callers in the queue.
Thank you very much. So since no one has submitted any testimony besides the applicant's presentation, there's no opportunity for the applicant to rebut. So this is the time where we come to the end, Mr. Bergens, that you talked about earlier, that where after this, you're not going to get much of a chance to speak. So we're gonna ask if there's any more questions for staff or for the city attorney. And I think just for the good of the order, is there anything that you feel is incredibly important that was left out of the discussion that you'd like to address now? I'm looking at you and I'm looking at your team. Just want to make sure that you're satisfied that you're getting due process here. Okay, good. Thank you. So are there any final comments from staff or from the city attorney on this application?
I don't believe I have any comments that I haven't said already, but
Thank you.
certainly happy to answer questions that the commission may have.
Lane, do you have anything you?
Yeah, just on the Anna connection, I think the testimony was that it would be gated and it would remain gated just for fire access. You know, if you look on the bottom of page 2 of the staff report quoting the development code, I just point out all local and collector streets, stub development site shall be extended within the site to provide through circulation. And so leaving it gated or closed for only emergency access, I think doesn't meet the code requirement of through circulation. So I think you're looking at the code really requiring it that at some point in the future, if not now, what that condition of approval gets at, and that is the ability to circulate across the development to Furville Road.
It creates the ability in the future
Yeah,
for through traffic.
Yeah, it provides a way to comply with that requirement in the future.
And we
But
need,
the requirement is that it provide through circulation, and
Right.
it just the fire emergency access doesn't get you there.
and if I understand the code correctly, the intention is that Hannah would be extended as a public street.
Or it could be.
The ability for it to be.
Mhm.
Is that what the extension?
That would have been the expectation, yes.
Because that's what the
Yeah,
code says,
Just
I believe.
extending southeast Anna through the site.
Right, so when you develop a site, if there's a street that
Yep.
could go through.
Yep.
You have to maintain the ability for that to, if not during your development, then
In the future.
in the future, that has to be maintained in order to meet the code. That's what I thought.
And that would be again triggered by at some point the city determining that it's time and it's necessary.
And I agree completely that the intention of not running people or people from the industrial area through the public street at this point is a good idea. But I do, yeah. Anna, I want to make sure that we understand that Anna does have to be able to be extended and approved.
Okay, we'll have the ability to rebut. Okay.
Got it.
So I just, I guess I would ask, what would constitute a through connection? Would a pedestrian connection from the street constitute a through connection? Would, I would argue a fire access through would constitute a through connection as well. So I guess I'm just gonna throw out there, is there something other than, I mean, a full-blown street that would constitute a through connection? I looked up through connection yesterday and I don't think I found a definition of it.
Yeah, I would say, Fred, if you look through section 3.4015 of the code, it really is, we're talking about vehicular traffic, we're talking about streets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything that goes on the street.
Because it's referring to local and collector streets. So if you're going to talk about a through connection, you don't put a freeway through a bike path. You put a freeway through a freeway. If it's a street, you put a street through it in order to put it through whatever while there may not be a definition, I would think the definition is inherent in what you're referring to.
yeah, it's the local and collector streets that stub the development, then being extended.
You extend that type
Mhm.
of street through.
To provide
And
through circulation.
that's the way it's always been.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, we're at the point where I'm gonna close the hearing as long as everybody's satisfied that I do that. And I'm gonna ask the applicant, I'm gonna ask the commission members, and I'm gonna ask staff. I think we're in good shape. Okay, so I'm now gonna declare this public hearing closed at 7:59 PM. And now is our opportunity for the planning commissioners to deliberate upon this application. So
since it's fresh in your mind, can I add my adjustment to the conditions?
Well, let's
Let's
see.
discuss first.
Let's discuss first. And I'll go last and you'll have
I'll
more
go
than your
second.
chance to continue your
Fair enough.
discussion. I'm just trying to keep this on track so that whatever decision we come to this evening is, 100% above board and meets all the requirements of state land use law and our development code. So I don't mean to cut anybody off or tell anybody that, you're out of time or you're out of line.
So quickly,
So,
I think that it's really clear that it has to be an ability for a street at some point. How we're gonna deal with that right now, I think we have some ability to adjust.
the ability for Anna Street to go through as a
Correct.
public street needs to be
Assured at some point.
assured in this decision. That's your-
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm just clarifying your,
Thank you. I did not say Anna.
and the ability to, not requiring it now. I
Correct.
think it's also.
Yeah, I think requiring it now by way of the easement, to Andy's point, I think that, setting it up as a driveway, I think that the easement, public easement should be the local street standard width, so it's ready to be built and extended at that point. I agree with the applicant's concern, with top corner though, I think, they're building to standard, there should be some assurances there, so I don't really support that part of the condition that, we will have to move with those conditions in the future. I think that due diligence and providing that safe spacing now to code. So that part of it, I disagree with that part, but Anna should be able to continue through.
Okay, thank you. Think I got all that?
I'm not an engineer,
That's okay.
but Tori, to follow on your point. The number one thing in the commissioner's handbook is fairness. And fairness to a business, so saying you have to comply to some future rule that's unknown. Seems like an abstract concept to me. And if that's in here, to me, that should be strict.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rich?
Yeah, I agree. As far as the driveway, if it meets today's standards, that's what it should be approved by. I don't agree with whatever might happen later on. And then as far as Anna Street, I agree. Either the right of way needs to be dedicated or it needs to be built. I guess you could dedicate the right of way, do a remonstrance. I'm not a big fan of those, but I know that's one way to push things off, kick the can down the road. But yeah, it's pretty clear to me that it needs to be extended. And unfortunately for that neighborhood that's there, I mean, this is how we get our circulation and our roads built, that they may end up getting more traffic. I understand your point, but on the same token, I think the code's clear, and I think the TSP is fairly clear on that, so.
Thank you. Excellent. Anyone else? I don't like to call on people by name. Sorry about that, Rich. I'm trying not to do that. What do you have to say? What do you have to say?
No, you're
I just
fine.
want to make sure everybody gets their chance.
Totally fine.
And we do it in an orderly fashion. Yeah, I'm not here keeping score. So are there any other, any comments and deliberation?
I guess, can I address one other thing? So I know they were talking about, my understanding is on the bottom half, there's right of way dedicated for the future for Villa, correct? And is there waivers there on those properties? Okay.
I don't want it.
Yeah, no, and I get that part. And I get that part too, and that's one reason why I don't care for them, because then whoever those property owners at some point, they may be saddled with the cost of building that versus building it now, although obviously it doesn't go anywhere. But I think that burden needs to be placed on these properties, because these are the properties that are developing.
Sure.
So.
And if it provides some additional context for the commission, typically when collector and arterial streets are being constructed, there is some city funding that's contributed to those, either in the form of SDC credits or what have you, because they are larger streets that are larger than just a regular local street. So there's more expensive construction standards, and so those sorts of things. And so usually there is some level of city contribution in those circumstances. Obviously with a development agreement, waiver of remonstrance to the formation of a local improvement district, like the waiver of remonstrance is an automatic yes vote to the forming of a local improvement district, but it does not waive the right to contest the dollar amount of the assessment. So that's a separate matter, which would occur, at such time as that may happen. So I know one of the questions that was brought up was how do you apportion the cost of that future project? And so there are certainly different ways to do that, to be, figured at the time that project is done. So.
Thank you, Chase. Commissioners, we're still deliberating this application. I think that we've heard some opinions on both the Anna Street and the placement of the driveway onto Cloud Corner. So are there any other deliberative comments? Andy, go ahead.
Regarding the removal or the relocation of the driveway, seems like we're all concerned with Big Brother imposing things on the existing development. My experience and understanding is the design process is taking into account what's there already. So I would anyway that there would be on the side of the designers consideration of putting the street so that it arbitrarily affect this property owner. One thing that I'm concerned with the second recommendation is that it talks about the driveway being relocated or removed. That assumes that the driveway would be removed only if the construction of Fur Villa gave the property owner an adequate access somewhere, because you can't remove somebody's access and just make it go away. So I'm a little concerned with leaving removed in there. I don't mind that if it has to be relocated and there's absolutely no other way, then I understand the applicant's concern, but I'd be even more concerned that access way could be actually removed completely, because we're not putting any condition in here that says removed if an adequate and an acceptable alternative is in place.
Well, I thought I heard a sense that for striking that condition, in which case those are not
Yes.
issues.
Well-
I think you may want to resolve that question before you get into the debate about how to
Well-
reformulate it.
I think the condition that it may need to be relocated could still be, I think it would need to be in there, which is the basis that I'm bringing my, concerns forward. If the rest of the commissioners want to just get rid of that and have this be there forever, I understand that completely. And if that's the sense of where we go, then that's fine.
And from a,
So I will leave it alone the way it is and we can take it out.
So
But is that a requirement in code that we have this in here? Or is that a decision on your part, Chase?
so that's a tricky question. The code obviously does have spacing standards. It references street classifications, it references the TSP. It specifically says that it applies to collector and arterial streets. It doesn't explicitly say that it applies to planned streets. It does reference the TSP and the standards therein, so the logical inference would be that that would include streets that are planned in the TSP as well, but it doesn't explicitly say, planned or proposed streets.
I think you
So
have discretion.
if you were to decide to strike it, I believe that could be supported by code. If you were to keep it, I believe that could also be supported by code. It's somewhat ambiguous as written, so.
I guess, and this is the last thing I'll say on the subject. I'm uncomfortable taking away whatever future people may need to do. The reason it's in the code is because things change and standards change. Who knows, someday this could be a freeway and that driveway may need to be removed, so I guess I wouldn't want to take removed away.
Well, and a city municipal code does give the city some level of authority to revoke access permits. Essentially at any time as needed for safety kind of purposes. So even if this language isn't in there, that wouldn't preclude necessarily the city from taking a necessary action if it comes to that point. Obviously, if we have an existing development agreement that says, hey, we can do this, then everyone's on notice and it's not, in theory, a big fight down the road. But even if that condition were removed in its entirety, the city still may have the ability to do so if it becomes necessary.
I thought we weren't removing the whole condition. I thought we were removing if the driveway does not meet the spacing standards in effect at that time, which is the last part of it, meaning it would have to meet the requirements now, but not necessarily some nebulous requirement later, which it sounds like we could do anyway if we so desired. But
By we, you don't mean the planning commission. you
I
the
mean,
city of
we, the
Dallas.
city
Yeah,
of
that's right.
Dallas,
Okay.
thank you, not the
Just trying to
planning
keep us-
commission, thank you.
Yeah.
So I want to clarify what people were thinking.
I think it should be struck. We don't need number
And,
two.
and I guess now that I'm reading it again, it says the shared driveway to Monmouth Cutup is approved for interim use.
Well, it isn't.
So are we making this sound like it's only temporary anyway? If we're saying that it's only for interim use, then we haven't provided how they're gonna get to somewhere else if they are. So either we get rid of the whole thing, or figure out what interim means. Because that sounds awfully temporary to me.
This sounds like an opportunity or a good time for me to weigh in. I'm of the opinion that the applicant meets current standards and that the entire condition regarding the movement or the elimination of that access point to be struck. Both parts of it.
I'm in agreement.
That's where I sit on it. I'm seeing heads nodding. At least you understand what I'm saying. That's a, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
You don't have to agree with me, just
I
understand
don't
what I'm
have to
saying.
agree.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's where I'm at, and my second opinion on this application is that the ability for Anna Street to be a future public street ought to remain intact.
In that case, if I may,
And I was
just gonna offer some language.
I was just gonna finish up by saying,
Okay.
I'm not gonna sit here and attempt to wordsmith the new conditions, since we're changing what the recommendation is. I will ask the city attorney to please assist
Yeah,
us with.
see if this captures what your thinking is here. It provides a little bit more clarity. This is 4E. Concurrent with the final plat, the applicant shall record a dedication of right of way and a future improvement guarantee / waiver of remonstrance extending of Southeast Anna Street to local street standards through the site to connect with Southeast Furvilla Road.
Do we need to, we've just heard that there are 3 different local street standards. Do we want to just leave it open as local street?
Yes.
And then it could be either 40, 50, God knows it'll never be 60,
Yeah.
but
I think it would be most logical to marry it to
the 50, do we want to do that at this time?
South.
So that it matches
And-
Anna current,
You could,
okay? Then a 50-foot right away.
is that Anna?
I would have to defer to the Public Works Department. I don't know what the current,
It's a 60-foot right of way, about 32-foot wide street.
Current Anna
It's not,
Street
it's
is,
not, it does not match, current standards. And we have allowed streets to extend and match current standards, whether they.
So we could narrow down.
Yeah,
is
so
what
We
it's
could,
saying.
we could make it a
We have
50-foot.
right of ways in town that are 50 or 60 feet and then jog in to like
Okay.
50 or something else to
That,
match.
that might help.
I'd be comfortable making it 50. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
almost be comfortable making it 40. Since it's not reasonably going to be parking through an industrial area. And it
I-
does get all the way to future for Villa since the right of way.
You could just say minimum local street standards and that, because the dedication would have to be done now.
I'm most comfortable with not us putting a number on it
Yeah.
and just saying that it meets local street standards at the time that it's required.
Well, but you'll want the
Problem is
dedication
there's
now.
three different ones.
Yeah,
Well, they can apply for whatever one.
Let's just pick one. Yeah,
I'd like to be nice and only make them do 40 feet, because I think they're trying really hard. And I think he's got a very valid point that this is an industrial area. And the poor guys had it not, I probably shouldn't say things like that, but anyway.
well, then what I would suggest is just say then the language to minimum local street standards, because 40 foot is the minimum local
I
street
would agree
standard.
with that.
And I would suggest probably a future dedication. The challenge with dedicating it now is that then we'd have to maintain it because it's public. So you're not really kicking anything
Agreed.
down the road if you
Okay.
dedicate now.
So, okay, that sounds
So
good.
future dedication and improvement.
Okay,
All
and
right,
do we want to say minimum, or do we want to say just local street
minimal
standard?
street standards, I like.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Really quickly though, like how did, so we're doing the plat.
Yeah, yeah,
this is
right.
Right away.
Yeah.
We're creating
Exactly.
easement, are you?
Yeah, we've got to define it.
something.
We've got to define it
Let's
because
say
it's got to go
40.
on a plat.
Are we good with 40 feet?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, 40 foot in alignment with existing Anna Street.
no
Well,
parking.
Means it'd
yeah.
be 5 feet in from each side of the.
Well, no,
No,
I
it's
don't-
60 feet.
Yeah.
So 10 feet in from
Yeah.
either side.
So what it would read then, try this on for size. Concurrent with the final plat, the applicant shall record a dedication of right of way and a future improvement guarantee / waiver of remonstrance extending southeast Anna Street to 40 foot local street standards through the site to connect with Southeast Fort Villa Road.
Do we want to say with how to align it with?
No, I think it's
That's an
Just
issue.
let it
That
happen.
figure it out.
Yeah, but I'm.
You're-
you're extended, you're extending. That's all we need to know.
The
Well,
ability-
where's the right of way gonna be dedicated then?
It shows on the plan.
Right, but Anna is 60 feet.
Yeah, I
Are
think
we gonna,
you can leave it to them.
so they can put 40 feet on one end or the other end or in the middle, whatever they feel like.
I'm not sure you're in a position to get that granular.
That works for, well, I just
Yeah.
looking at trying to design things for Mr. Public Works, but
I won't put it off on the side, I promise.
thank you. I'll trust you on this one.
You said
If everybody else is good with it, I'm good.
Okay,
We're working together here, okay. That works for me. 40 foot right away.
If there's nothing else, I'd like to move that we approve the subdivision application with the changes to 4E and the striking of
Two.
2.
Two. I know another concern of the applicant was 4F, which was the non-remonstrance, but I think we need, are we agreed we're gonna keep that in? Okay, that works for me.
we all,
Strike 2.
okay,
and
so we have a motion
second.
and a second.
If I could read that.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, just, so we know
Let's read that back so
exactly,
we know
exactly what we're
talking
voting on. That's
So we
right.
have a motion and a second on the application with changes to the conditions.
Striking 2 and revising Form E to read as follows. Concurrent with the final plat, the applicant shall record a dedication of right of way and a future improvement guarantee / waiver of remonstrance extending southeast Anna Street to 40 foot local street standards through the site to connect with Southeast Fort Villa Road.
You left out 40 feet. that we-
No, I did not.
No, he did.
He said it.
Can you read it one more time so I hear where 40 feet come out?
Extending southeast Anna Street to 40 foot local street
Got it.
standards through the site to connect with Southeast Fort Villa.
Shouldn't it be 40 foot right away dedication?
No, I know, the dedication has to go now, so it's on the plat.
Right, but shouldn't it say, when you're talking about we're talking about right of way dedication, wouldn't you want to say a 40 foot right of way dedication?
Yes, that's what it is.
But the 40 foot is later on in what you're
It's
saying.
all part of, it's all
Okay.
part of the
It's
same.
good. You're good.
You're the lawyer, I'm good. I'm sorry I'm being such a pain, but I'm really trying to get this right.
It's all about a 40 foot local street standard.
Got it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion before I ask for a vote? Are we all satisfied? Okay, so then I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote on the motion and the second as amended and read to us by our city attorney.
Commissioner Newell,
Yes.
Commissioner Spofford,
Yes.
Commissioner Schulte,
Yes.
Commissioner Banford, Commissioner Kowash,
Yes.
Commissioner Grow,
Yes.
Commissioner Swanson.
Yes. The motion has passed unanimously and an order reflecting the planning commission's decision tonight will be mailed to the applicant and all participants of record within 10 business days. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it and your patience. So
I just want to say thanks. You guys-
not at all, not at all.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank
Make
you.
a good project, hopefully it goes good. Take care. Thanks, Chase.
Good luck with city council.
Well, no, not, only if they appeal.
Okay, you're done.
Only if they appeal.
I mean, they can appeal their own approval.
They
have that right.
They could, they
There
could
is,
appeal.
they have
conditions.
the ability to appeal our changes.
Yeah.
That they don't like the conditions.
Right, right.
So let's make sure we stay in our lane,
Yeah.
even as we
Yeah.
make final decisions, okay?
Right, we're here, okay.
Okay, so we're gonna now move on to our second public hearing of the evening, which is a conditional use permit, 2402 for a
Can we
childcare
take a
facility.
5-minute break?
Absolutely, we can. We're gonna take a 5-minute break before we go into our next public. For second public hearing, conditional use permit 2402 for a childcare facility at Dallas Retirement Village, or for Dallas Retirement Village. So we're gonna go back to the public hearing is regarding property located at 175 Northwest Lang Street. This is an official public hearing before the Dallas Planning Commission, and I now declare this public hearing open at 8:28 PM. As the application is subject to land use proceedings recognized by state law, I'm required to read the following statement. The failure to raise an issue with sufficient detail to afford the planning commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals based upon that issue. So please direct all testimony this evening to the record and the applicable criteria listed in the staff report or to criteria in the Dallas Development Code you believe applies to the decision. The applicable approval criteria are found in code chapters of the Dallas Development Code 4.4.040.A, conditional use permit approval criteria, and 4.2.060.A, site design review approval criteria. At this time, I'll ask any members of the planning commission if they have a conflict of interest, have conducted a site visit, or have had ex parte contact to declare regarding this application. Seeing none, we'll move on. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. We'll begin with the staff report, followed by questions from the planning commission to staff. Thereafter, we'll hear from the applicant, including members of the applicant team, for a total of 15 minutes, plus or minus, that may be followed by questions from the commission. Thereafter, we'll hear from all other interested parties in presenting testimony on this item before the commission, and each person testifying will be provided 5 minutes to testify. Then we'll give the applicant 5 minutes to rebut any testimony that was received. After we've heard all testimony, I will close the hearing, ask the commission to deliberate, and then ask if there's a motion in response to this proposal. In this case, the planning commission's decision is final unless the decision is appealed. So we'll start with the staff report. Thank you.
Yes, so as mentioned, the site is at 175 Northwest Lang Street. That's there in the northwest part of town, just off of Ellendale. It is adjacent to and in many ways surrounded by the Dallas Retirement Village campus. It's located in the low density residential zone. So it is residentially zoned. As we can see on the air photo, though, it is largely surrounded by Dallas Retirement Village and also owned by them. As seen from the street here, the structure is a currently constructed as a single family dwelling. And the request is to convert the dwelling into a daycare use. Daycares are allowed in the residential zones with a conditional use permit, so they are, permitted. They're not prohibited. They are allowed with the conditional use permit. So it's a conditional use. Moving on. So yeah, I stumbled over that pretty badly, didn't I? So there's essentially 3 approval criteria for conditional uses. Specifically, site has to be adequate for the need. Negative impacts on adjacent properties can be mitigated, and public facilities have adequate capacity to support the development. And so the written staff report goes into some findings tied to that. One of the other sets of approval criteria for conditional uses is the site design review. They are tied together, and there's 5 approval criteria for site design review. Has to be complete application, and underlying land use district standards have been met. Any non-conforming development is upgraded. Site design standards of Article 3 are met, and any pre-existing conditions of approval are satisfied. And so again, the staff report goes into some detail on those findings. But to conclude, the application can meet the relevant approval criteria, And so staff are recommending approval of the application with 4 conditions. That the applicant get all necessary building permits and inspections, that they obtain the required state licensing prior to occupancy. On the subject of non-conforming development, that they have to either remove or replace the existing driveway access, which doesn't meet current ADA accessibility standards where it crosses the sidewalk. So either upgrading that driveway or removing it entirely. And then specifically to minimize traffic impact, the facility would be limited to the Dallas Retirement Village employees and their families. So we don't have kind of the general community driving to the site. One of the key issues that we've encountered with this application was the issue of traffic. The projected trip generation for a daycare facility, according to the ITE standards, is actually quite high. But in this case, because it's employee childcare, those employees are traveling to the site already. So the increase in the number of trips, if it's limited to the employees, is effectively nothing. It's maybe 1 or 2 additional trips for the staff person who works specifically with childcare, but obviously that's a different calculus than if you open it up to the whole community. So that's kind of where that 4th condition of approval comes from. So any questions for staff on that? Yes.
Do we know what size the house is, and is there a requirement for, I know it talks about it's gotta be adequately licensed by the state.
Mhm.
Do we have any understanding of how many children this size facility could take care of?
So I do believe the applicant has some details on that information. I'll be honest, I kind of try not to duplicate the state's bureaucracy where I can avoid it. So
Thank you.
yes, I didn't go into findings related to that because that's not my bailiwick.
Do we have an aerial of the area? I'm looking on the maps and I'm just wondering. There we go. Can you, I don't suppose you can zoom in. So is Dallas Retirement Village behind it, and what's around the cul-de-sac at the end of the?
Yeah, so all of this is Dallas Retirement Village. It's all of that.
Okay, do we know?
And a bunch of the single family homes on Lang Street are also owned by them.
Oh,
Not all of them, but a number of them.
okay. Is it intended that this site be accessed from the street? Or are they possibly going, I'm just trying to think, if it's employees only, are they gonna be bringing their children from the back across where there's somewhere there's a parking lot? Or are they gonna have to drive up and drop their kids off in front of this thing? Just from my understanding, and maybe that's not question, yeah.
I would recommend asking that of the
Okay.
applicant if they have a specific plan.
Sounds
I
good.
know that on the subject of parking requirements, as discussed in the staff report, we did defer on that as well, because again, the employees are already parking in the larger campus, which obviously is quite a large campus. So,
Yeah, and that's where parking came into my head too,
right.
and that brought access, anyway.
Mhm.
Continue, good job on the staff report.
Are there any other questions for staff on the staff report before we get to the applicant presentation? Seeing none, invite the applicant to step forward. You've already had a pretty good show as to how this goes, and I know that DRV has been here before with a number of things. So without further ado, state your name, your address for the record, and then proceed with your presentation. Thanks.
My name's Emma Brown and I live at 434 Southwest Rose Avenue. I just moved there in Dallas.
And I'm Dale Padilla and I live in 1218 North Third Avenue, Staten, Oregon.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Are we approved? No. I want to,
It's more difficult.
Yeah, that was quite fun. That was quite fun.
Question.
I do want to answer Andy's
Thank you.
question, and that is how many kids that we are able to serve 41 maximum. Will we be doing 41? Probably not. Where I think we're right now on track for
28
28.
is probably our max right now. We could do 31 if we're using one of the rooms as an office, which I'm not doing. Their absolute max, but we're not gonna do.
Okay, so is
And
that,
they're presenting
Sorry.
nice questions later.
We have,
So walk us through how DRV, got to where you're at.
people are gonna access it?
yeah, absolutely. So, well, we're 30 plus acres. We have 300 employees. A lot of them are in our healthcare. And as you all know, childcare is a major part of getting our employees to work and keeping them there. We found that out through COVID. COVID hit and we, definitely lost a lot of employees because of that, because they had to stay at home and watch their kids and whatnot. We wanted to provide for our employees. And this is only for DRV staff. We're not offering it out to the public or anything like that. So it's for DRV staff only, just to kind of get that retention down. But as far as accessing it, we do have a drop-off spot in front of the 175 Lang Street address. We also have part of that parcel is a parking lot in the back, which we have created prior to us even thinking about this for our CNA classroom students. So we've got 2 parking spots back there designated for it, 2 in front of 175. And then of course we have the driveway that will also supply 1. We plan on having the 2 in front on the curbside to be the drop-off point. All of the drop-off or employees will be parking on the DRV campus where they've always parked. We got several large parking areas that the DRV employees park, and that's where they will continue to park.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't know what else do you?
I don't think
You
so.
don't,
No.
yeah, you don't
That's
have to
perfectly-
say.
That's perfectly okay. I just want to make sure you have,
Yeah.
you get your chance.
Yeah.
So walk through, sit right there. If that concludes your presentation, this is an opportunity now for commissioners to ask any questions of the applicant. So if anybody has any questions, I know I have one, but I'll go last. So
I have one.
Carol?
So, there's a daycare on the way to my work, and it's a similar size. It's a little bigger. And with all the gear you have with a kid, you're not gonna go park in your regular parking spot and walk the however long to the house to drop off your child. You're gonna come, drop off your child, and then you're gonna go find your spot.
That's correct.
So you're gonna have 28 plus cars coming through to drop off kids. So if they can hit the back entrance and come through, that might work a little better, but you're still gonna have quite the backlog of cars coming through. Something to think about as you're planning.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and we have thought of that. Like I said, in the
There's
back of.
too much gear.
Yeah.
You're just not gonna have them walking across.
Well,
the parking lot.
there is going to be a majority of the employees. We have taken a survey of our employees. There will be a number of employees parking in our parking lot and walking their children over. But we did take into account that there will be a number of cars coming and going, and that's where the parking lot in the back of the house is coming into play. We put a man gate in the back to where they can entrance from the back as well. So we've got 3 in the front and 2 in the back where they can drop
You're
off.
still gonna have a little bit of a bottleneck, but it'll be better if you have 2 entrances.
That's right. That's
Okay.
just correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
That helps me
Mhm.
understand.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Mhm.
Okay, that's
They're
fine.
easy, quick.
And I'll just remind commissioners that when we ask, we've got concerns, make sure we ask a question. And you did, so thank you. I said that to Andy before, after the last one, so I just want to make
Yes,
sure that we all
okay.
heard that. When we ask questions of the applicant or from staff, we're not making declarations, that's
Kind of like Jeopardy.
it's for deliberation, exactly, it's like Jeopardy. Put it in the form of a question, so thank you.
First, you are assuming, are you intending to make the improvements to the driveway?
Yes,
Okay. Second question, the condition that we have written in here says, in order to minimize traffic impacts, childcare shall be exclusively for the use of Dallas Retirement Village employees and their families. Is it your understanding that it's only, because I could see, well, is it only people who are actively employed and their children? Or is it employees who work for you, children that they have, their children, grandchildren, everything else? Are you leaving it open for that in case you want to fight them for getting up to your max, or just to understand what the idea is?
well, first of all, we're not gonna have trouble getting up to our max. With 300 employees on our campus, we're definitely gonna fill that and surpass it. We'll have a waiting list, but to answer your question, it's only for DRV employees, period.
And their children or grandchildren or people associated with just the employee
Dependents.
Yeah,
dependents. Is it intended to be dependents?
No.
Or-
it is only for employees that work for DRV.
That's probably the best way, because, I don't want to say dependent. That's a legal standard that you wouldn't
Yes.
expect DRV to be getting into.
Right. Well, if you say if it's for the employees, then they're the ones going to be in the childcare.
Oh,
I'll leave that. to
Gotcha.
you. I'm satisfied and I'm good.
there you go.
You
There
guys
you go.
can figure it out.
I got it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to do too
We
much.
have some of them as well.
I don't know what the sunshine did to everybody last few days. My question is on you said that you had the maximum number that you could be permitted would be 41. You're thinking more like 31, but keep it to 20. Is that the state licensing requirements to set those numbers? I just wanted to ask you that for clarification.
Yeah,
That's-
so before they came out and looked at the place and they said 41 was our max. But now if we're making any changes, it's gonna be a new number.
Right,
So we're thinking 28 is probably where we'll stay.
right. Because part of that space is gonna be used for your offices, isn't that what you stated? Okay.
Correct.
And
Thank
we
you.
don't have anything to say about that, because that's totally controlled by the state.
That's
so.
correct. That's correct. Be a licensed facility, so that relieves us of the burden of looking into any of that. So thank you. That was the only question I had. Commissioners, do we have any other questions of the applicant before we move on? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we'll move on. And if we have any clarifying questions, I assume you're gonna be here, so.
Need to ask for any public.
Yeah, now I'm gonna ask for anybody in attendance who'd like to address the commission on this item. This would be somebody that would be a neighbor that was notified, and there's nobody left in the room. There's nobody in the queue, so I don't anticipate any testimony. So there's no need for you to wait around and rebut that testimony. So we're gonna move on. Thank you very much. So are there any final comments from the city staff or the city attorney before I close the hearing regarding this conditional use permit? No. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and declare this public hearing closed at 8:46 PM. So let's deliberate on the topic. So commissioners, any comments, questions amongst ourselves, questions for Lane or city staff? Before we, somebody makes a motion on the thing.
I think they did a great job and they've covered all the bases that I can see.
I think it'd be a nice resource.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see that there's a lot of demand for this, like you mentioned, with businesses all over the state, so it's nice to see employers addressing it.
Mhm.
I think this is something that is an excellent addition to our community. Dallas Retirement Village is one of our main employers here in Dallas. We appreciate you very much and all of your employees. These folks don't all live in Dallas. They come here, they shop in our stores, they're using they're using all of our amenities, and this is a good business practice that is being used in other places. Something that's kind of close to my heart in terms of how I see employees dealing with or employers dealing with their employees and their their needs that are outside of the 8 hours that they work a day, or the 40 hours they work away. Dallas is what's considered by definition a childcare desert. That means that there are 3 times as many kids under 5 as there are spots available for childcare. It's done by census tract. I looked it up today, and there's 2 or 3 different census tracts that touch the city of Dallas. I'm not going to get into all that, but they're all considered by definition to meet the to be a childcare desert. So this is something that's not just good for the community and good for DRV and your employees. I think this is something that I'd like to. It's laudable. So thank you. I think this is a terrific thing that you're doing. I have no objections to this at all, but I'm not in a position to make a motion on it. So I will entertain a motion by any planning commissioner on this conditional use.
I move to approve the conditional use permit with the conditions stated in staff report.
Thank you. Made and seconded. Is there any more discussion before we call for a vote? I think we're all on the same page, so let's just do a voice vote. All of those approved, or all those in favor of approving this application with the conditions as submitted in the staff report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Hearing none. This motion passes unanimously. An order reflecting the commission's decision tonight will be mailed to the applicant and all participants of record within 10 business days. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
For what you're doing and also for your patience as we work ourselves. You know, we're citizen volunteers here, and we learn something new every single meeting that we have. So thank you very much and congratulations and good luck with the project.
And you've
Thank
got
you.
more houses on that street. You gotta
We
make
do.
them all.
No,
He just said where the need is.
Right. Thank you very much.
You bet.
And good luck.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, we're gonna move on to the rest of the agenda. Number 7, other business, future development code updates. Chase, what have you got?
Yes, so, sign that before you go.
No, wait a minute, what am I signing?
It's the words.
Okay.
So, yes, so, development code updates, yes, so. Obviously, we just went through a major round of code updates. And so we're gonna not be doing a big old package just yet. But we do have a few somewhat urgent topics to try and bring to you guys and resolve. The one that is particularly a hot button issue at the moment relates to the setbacks for accessory structures. And so kind of the point of this agenda item is to broach the subject with you and see if it's something that you would feel comfortable getting an actual staff proposed language for amendment. So the issue that we're running into is that there are a very large number of accessory structures, sheds, carports, those sorts of things, that have been constructed recently and also over the previous few decades, which don't meet the 3-foot setback from side and rear property line spelled out in the development code. Code enforcement has been dealing with this off and on as they become aware of it. Obviously, folks don't like being told that their shed or their garage or their carport is non-conforming, 5 or 10 or 15 years after they built it, or even as it's being built because the company said, hey, it's fine. Never trust the salesman. But to the extent that there are a very large number of sheds, carports, garages that don't meet that setback, staff are wondering what kind of appetite Planning Commission might have for modifying that 3-foot setback, perhaps even eliminating it entirely so that sheds and carports and whatnot could be built all the way up to the property line. Obviously, with the applicable building codes, fire codes having been satisfied so that such construction is safe. But
Troy, you got something?
I know that we've had a number of variance applications over the last few years that you may recall on similar kind of situations. And so some of those came to you guys after the structures were built. A few of them came before. So trying to see, because obviously once you start getting a whole bunch of situations that are non-conforming, it makes you question what is the appropriateness of the regulation? What is the legitimate government purpose that it's trying to serve? And so I know Troy has his hand up. He probably has a thing or two to say on this.
Detached accessory structures that are non-combustible
All
construction.
right,
Not-
your metal sheds,
But
yeah.
Metal type prefabs.
Mhm.
stuff that you see on-
West Coast Metals is obviously right down the road. They sell a lot of those kind of prefab structures. But yeah,
So it's attached to the house, it's still gotta meet setbacks. These are, and what's the minimum? Is it 200 square feet before you need a permit? You can build a little metal shed.
It's detached, one story,
Mhm.
non-habitable. 200 square feet or less is exempt.
Is
But it
exempt.
still has to meet site.
See, yeah, this is
Yeah.
the problem. Someone builds something 200 square feet or smaller, they're not gonna come in for a permit, they're not gonna get site plan review, they're not gonna even know
Mhm.
that they need to put it.
And we
Mhm.
Right.
That way they map it out, see that meets setback.
but obviously only the
I think it's a small shed that is in, that you don't have to come to the city for something, and they're probably not gonna get records, they don't know. I think that makes
That's right.
sense.
Are you asking for debate on this or just if we want to listen to the?
What your opinion is on.
what kind of would you guys be willing to entertain such a proposal? I mean, if you guys are like, no way, no how, the rules that we have today were, handed down from the God above and we're not gonna touch them. So be it. We will find other ways to deal with our current situation. But if you guys might be open to the idea of modifying those rules,
Was there some reasoning behind it to begin with?
Just sort of blanket.
Well,
You know,
That
I'm
was gonna be my
Yeah.
thought is sometimes what we think is the property line is not.
yep.
most.
And, okay, and then a fence or something gets built right on the line.
Mhm.
Or over the line. And so wasn't the idea of the setback
Oh, to avoid that.
to avoid going over the line when they don't know where the line is?
Certainly that could be one consideration, although setbacks are measured from property line, not fences. So if you did get it wrong, you'd be
You still got it
non-conforming. You see the problem? Yep.
Zero lot line construction is permissible.
Yeah,
So, and it's up to the property owner to make sure that they're building it on their property, so they don't have to move it. But are we specifically gonna, is the language gonna say non-combustible materials? Is that the idea? So these are.
So we don't
metal-
have specific language yet. We would craft a proposal and bring it to you. I don't know if it's going to specifically call out construction material type or if it's going to defer to building code. That's a conversation to be had if you guys are open to the idea. Sounds like maybe you're open to the idea,
Yeah.
so.
Troy, you mentioned non-combustible materials.
Yeah, it's
a fire.
It's way too expensive, complicated to make a detached accessory structure meet code if it's combustible. Then you're talking about firewalls and, fire rated construction. And for a shed, that means sheetrock on both sides of the wall, outside and inside, with an approved assembly.
so this is unrelated to accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Correct.
Unrelated.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I can, I deal with this when code enforcement contacts me, and I think their frustration is they have so many of these around
Right.
town that
Right,
it makes it really hard for them to cite somebody,
I
even when there's
totally get
a
it.
complaint, because they say, well, what about
they're
the other
everywhere.
533 of these in Dallas? what are you doing about them?
Even if it's.
And I think that's the impetus of that.
Yeah, right.
So yes, I'd be interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay,
Workshop it.
we're gonna
amongst
workshop
you
that. We're
guys
gonna
and
come up
make
with some
sure that Troy's
language.
comfortable
Oh,
with
yeah.
it.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have Public Works and
I just
Building
hope that
Department,
this-
Fire Department, everyone will weigh in on it before we bring it to you
Those are the
formally.
main three.
So
But-
many times
And this is
have
gonna
I
make-
been through this routine with the sheds and the fences and it's play structures, all of it. It's tough and it's tough because there's gonna be a small percentage of the public that aren't interested in compliance or community standards or and it's unfortunate that we got it. So yeah, bring something back to us and make sure that we get it in plenty of time so that we can
Oh,
read
yeah.
it over. So like I said, it's kind of hard for us right now, especially after what we've just been through for the last couple hours to
Right, yeah, I wasn't
digest
looking
it.
for you to specifically tell me what it should be. I just wanted to get your sense of, is this something that we should pursue? So,
It's gonna make your life easier and code enforcement's life easier.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
take a look if you would, just to make it easier for us and for members of the public. Take a look at what some other communities in the vicinity of similar size to Dallas are doing with theirs. I mean, try and cite some examples as to how this is being handled in other jurisdictions. I think that would be helpful for us
Yes.
to digest the code change.
Knowing that we're not reinventing the wheel is a great thing.
Yeah.
well, but you also risk the blind leading the blind, so.
Okay.
Call people who already have one of these and figure out what they have problems with. That's what we want to hear.
So I have a legal question that's pretty important.
Related to this?
Related to something that someone asked me and I had no idea. How is it that we are, as the city of Dallas, able to put a contract on a piece of property that's not in city limits?
We need contract.
Huh?
The city can buy a property that's.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
we actually own a substantial amount of land, hundreds of acres of farmland outside of town,
but if
like,
someone else owns it, can the city of Dallas
oh, do eminent
put a
domain?
sewer easement on a county property?
Yes, we can run utility main lines, transmission lines through properties outside the city. Yes, we cannot provide service to those properties
So
necessarily.
you can give them false promises and have them sign a contract, but you don't have to give them the service.
So there's a difference between having the easement for the
I get that.
Mhm,
I'm
right.
just asking the
No,
question
it's-
because
yeah,
they
it's
asked
state
me.
law that we cannot serve.
Yeah.
Properties. If we have an easement across the property for a transmission line, it is to transmit,
Mhm.
not to serve.
there may be some language of you can give them like one in exchange.
Yeah.
Water
right.
only, okay.
Right.
Outside our municipal.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, we do provide water service outside in now a rare occasion.
because we have this grant that's covering La Creole.
Yes. Mhm.
And across the street is not city property. And they're asking people to do the easements on the opposite side of the road.
Yes, and so the intention is that whole area, because that's all inside the urban growth boundary. The idea is it's all eventually going to be annexed. But one of the prerequisites for annexation is you have to be able to serve it with city utilities. And if there's no city utilities, you see the chicken and egg problem. So yeah,
You gotta put the main lines in first at least.
Right.
Well, they have to be available.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which means an easement secured.
Well, where are you referring to? I mean, are you talking the property
Uh,
north of Elmdale?
The ones that aren't in the city limits, and I didn't think they were in the urban growth boundary, but apparently they are. So it would be past Hawthorne to Fur Villa on the north side.
Okay, so those properties are being asked for us to get permission to go in and assess the properties for the location of a future pressure main.
But they,
We're not, there's no contract being signed.
there's a contract they asked them to sign,
It's a
Access?
agreement for, it's an
access easement.
It's an access agreement, meaning we want access to your property
To
to
take a look.
assess
Uh-huh.
the right.
Just to
location
go on to.
Just to go on it and look at it. It's us asking permission to enter the property.
So they can say no.
They could, but then we have rights through state law for survey law that we could then come back and say, we are going to access. it. We're asking for permission.
Okay,
If you give us permission, great. If not, we can then issue a letter saying we will access,
Right.
for survey purposes.
okay,
I mean, that's all
That
that's really we're doing is trying to locate the best spot for the pressure for the lift station that's gonna go on the east side of Lockville Node. For sanitary.
so
For
it
right
could go
sanitary,
on an individual property,
what's that?
the lift station.
Well, I mean, it will be located what is on current private property, but it's going to be within the Lockville Node. Which
Oh,
will need to
okay.
develop.
Which is
At
on
some
the-
point, it's going to be dedicated public land, but it's not at this time. We just-
Someone asked me, I had no idea what to tell them.
No, all we're doing is trying to find out the best location of where to place the sanitary lift station. And what route the pressure main will be taking from that lift station up to Ellenwood.
Okay,
And so we just need access to the properties to say, is this a good location? Yes
okay,
or no?
And you're doing carrot before stick.
Yeah, I mean, well,
You're being nice first.
yeah, we're being nice first. I mean, we're asking permission, and then if someone comes in and says, no, we're not gonna sign this, there are means we could go through and say, we need to access your property. Now, here's your notice that in 2 weeks, we're gonna access your property. This-
okay. Thanks, that helps. That's all I had.
Anything else, Chase?
I think we bled into Commissioner.
Yes,
comments.
you did there.
That's why I said, is that when you started your questions, like, is it still about sheds? No, I just. Okay, so for the good of the order, are there any staff comments before we adjourn?
That was the only,
Chase, you have anything else
that
before we?
was the only development code update you had.
Yes, there's also a question about signs, temporary signs advertising community events. We're looking at maybe addressing that through municipal code, but that may be through development code. So yeah, so the tour of homes is coming up, and there isn't really a provision in the code necessarily to allow signs for that. So
Take them down, just
yeah,
Signs
common sense.
right.
on that city. You can
find
find
all
all those guys, it's everywhere now.
Yes, yes.
You
So
get a code update and then you can go comply the hell out of
yes.
it.
I'm triggered right now. Now the signs come up, now.
I know, yeah. And so that's why we've been talking about maybe there's some provision we can do through municipal code that wouldn't involve the
Yeah.
land use process.
Anything that's temporary and gets moved around and can be moved around, you just can't.
Yeah.
We're chasing our tails.
Yeah.
The less that kind of stuff is governed through development code, the better, because you just can't keep up with it. Because there's gonna be realtors and estate salespeople and that are just that know how to play.
Graduates.
They know how to play the game and they just
Yeah.
know how to just constantly, dodge around it. So leave us out of the temporary sign thing if you can.
I'll do my best.
Devil's advocate, you start letting it go and pretty soon you start with a trickle and then you end up with a torrent.
Well, it's an oxymoron anyway with temporary sign.
Exactly.
They're all fading.
Temporary.
Yeah. It's so temporary that it's completely faded and tattered. Right?
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
Sorry.
we're home.
Okay.
I declare this meeting, planning commission meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
One time. More than one time. We were.